All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to day 2 of grad school week, where I've put together a panel of experts in the entire process from beginning to end, from their own experiences and going through it. I'll allow each of them to introduce themselves, but one thing that's unique about them collectively, I want to point out, is they represent different phases of the process. So from the how do I apply? What's that application part like? Aya fits in that. She's just finished that process herself. Mikayla is currently a PhD student. She's been here for 3 years, so she's got a lot of experience under her belt to talk about. And Tynecia is a graduate of a grad program from Temple, so she can give us not only the beginning part, but really that, okay, after you have earned the degree, anything different? So she'll talk to us about that. But Aya, why don't you go ahead and just give us a little synopsis about who you are, what you're about, what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So, hello everyone. My name is Aya. I'm a senior psychology major here at Temple. Um, Fun fact about me, I'm going to be studying abroad next semester, which I'm really excited about. Just like Bob said, next academic year, I'm going to be a master's in management student at Georgetown University.
Cool. Mikayla, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Mikayla, and I am in my 3rd year of my PhD program here at Temple. I'm a media and communication student in Klein College. And yeah, I'll just leave that right there for now.
Tynecia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tynecia Wilson. I'm a 2-time Temple grad from Temple University, and I have my master's degree in advocacy and organizational development, and I was in the first graduating cohort once Temple made that switch in the College of Ed, and I'm excited to be here to talk to you all today.
Yeah. That's great. I did not know that. Yeah, a 2-time Temple-made person. Fantastic. I had a few questions to kind of kick the conversation off that come up a lot when we at the Career Center meet with students one-on-one or sometimes in group presentations about graduate school. So these are some of the kind of consistent things that we encounter. I wanted to start there, but I'm sure there's folks in the audience that have, very personal, specific to them kind of questions that they also have a chance to ask us. I know one thing that comes up a lot is just the question of, should I go to graduate school? What's that thing that motivates you to go to graduate school? We know there's all kinds, and I was hopeful each of you could speak to what motivated you, and if you had any thoughts about what might be some bad motivations. I'll open the floor up to any of you if you want to just jump in on that.
Yeah, I can jump in. I would say what motivated me was working in a career that I hated. I was working in marketing and I was extremely stressed out. And I didn't like where I thought my career path was heading. It was going in a positive direction, but I knew I didn't want to stay in marketing and I didn't want to get stuck in marketing. And then years down the line, I would regret not having gotten out and gotten my PhD. And I was doing a lot of political advertising work, and I thought that it was extremely unethical. And that kind of motivated me to want to look more into ethics and get more background as a researcher. So that's what led me to Temple and pursuing a PhD. And actually the same thing when I did my master's degree. I was working in PR in New York. I didn't really like it. And again, I was yearning for more education. So then I moved to Amsterdam and did my master's degree in Amsterdam for a year. And then I came back and worked and then wound back up in education.
Interesting.
I think I can go next. So, my situation is a little bit different. I'm an international student from Kazakhstan. So the thing with international students, I don't know if any of you guys know that we only have 1 year to find a job in America. Since my degree is a Bachelor of Arts, I only have that 1 year, but those who have a STEM designation have like an additional 1 or 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. So the reason I wanted to go into to master's in management is that it's a science program and it allows me more time to find a job in HR and consulting, which are spheres that I'm most interested in.
Okay.
I think Mikayla and I have brought up two really good points, both timeline and then also that one moment that kind of pushes you to make that decision into what you're going to do next. For me personally, my experience, when I started looking into master's program, it was COVID. And so I was like, okay, well, everyone's home. Let me look into what my education and furthering that while I'm at home. So I started in secondary education and I was a Spanish teacher utilizing my bachelor's degree, which is in Spanish. And then I remember back to that idea of like that one moment, I taught a lesson on SMART goals. And I realized how much I loved soft skill development, personal and professional development. And I wanted that to look a little bit different. And I knew that I can do that as a Spanish teacher in that capacity, but I wanted to do something different. So after I did that, and that was around November, December 2020, I saw that Temple had just changed their adult and organizational development program into advocacy and organizational development. And that was very aligned with what I was doing. I was very big in education. I love nonprofit work. I'm very aligned with what my core values are, and that's always in education. That's always in helping others. That's always in developing what our future leaders are going to look like. And so that was kind of my big motivation in coming into the advocacy master's degree. And it was kind of just all about the timing. When I looked it up and it was just like right there, this is a new program. We're looking for students to be a part of it. I applied and I got in, and that was kind of what my journey looked like. So definitely the motivation to stay true to what my core values were, and to get education, and definitely those credentials that would show that no, I just don't care about advocacy, but I learned about people-centered community development. I learned about what change looks like, and the best ways to sustain change.
Interesting. Did any of you apply to more than one school? And if you did, I imagine maybe there was some rejection. And if so, how did you deal with that, navigate that acceptance and rejection?
Yeah, and also just one more point to make. I know you had asked what are some motivations that we shouldn't have when applying to grad school? What are some bad ones? I would say if anyone tells you go to grad school because you don't know what to do, bad idea. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, and can be a lot of stress. So if you're not sure that you want to get a graduate degree, I would say take some time, work, and then figure it out. But don't go to grad school just for the sake of just going to buy time, because it is not something that you want to go into lighthearted, because it is your time and your money and your energy. Yes.
Yeah, that's good advice for sure. So that actually makes me think of a different question, and then we'll come back to the other one, is that timeline. And it sort of ties into motivations. In some cases, as you point out, Mikayla, the reason is, just because you don't know what you want to do. And that's probably, and I think we all agree, that's an expensive way to try to figure that out. But what do you think about the idea? Because we are often confronted with this question. Should I go right after undergrad? Should I wait a little bit? I know in Aya's case, you're going to roll right into the next one, and that ties into some of your motivation. But I'm curious for Mikayla and Tynecia, what you think about that in terms of those gaps.
Tynecia, do you want to go or you want me to go?
Yeah, I could jump in. I think I think it's going to be different for everyone, right? You have to look at what your own capacity is. You have to look at if you would like to take a break after your bachelor's degree, whether that is to take some time to work. Some advice that I would give, and something I wish I knew before I got my master's degree, is that there are a lot of programs and different benefits out there, especially when you work at a university, right? So if you're thinking about going into education, and not just education, because working in higher ed, there's so many different industries inside of one school, right? So when you think about it, there's marketing inside of the school, there is safety, there's the hospital, there's so many different things that you can do while working at a university. So I would say some advice there. If you do want to take some time and find a job at a university, that kind of cuts down that cost when it comes to paying for school. So that's like one piece of advice that I would give. But just overall, when it comes to what the timeline is, if it's going straight into your master's degree or taking some time, that's some time that you have to take to reflect on yourself, right? Do you want to take some time and work and then go back? Are you the type of person, if you kind of get out of that routine of school, that you may not want to go back to school? So that's really like, you need to take some time and reflect on who you are and the capacity that you have.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for some people, taking time off would maybe would be harder for them to then go back to school. Sometimes you kind of get out of that rhythm of being a student and it's hard to get back in. But I always recommend people to take off, work, and again, don't use grad school as a way to buy time. Figure out what you don't like, which is a great place to start when you're deciding what you want to do and study, is when you can start crossing things off your list of, I don't like this, I don't want this. Then you'll have a bit of a easier time figuring out a program that you really do want and navigating that program to get what you want out of it. Yeah, like I'm so happy that I took off time before my master's degree and my PhD to work professionally. One, you're able to save up money, you kind of get more in the hang of being an adult and the responsibilities. I know I've seen a lot of grad students struggle with the time management and the accountability because it's largely on you. You're not going to be kind of walk through it like you are an undergrad. So if you have the experience of working and being an adult and, you know, having your freedom and autonomy and responsibility, then it can make navigating a hyper independent program like grad school a little bit more familiar.
That's a thoughtful piece of advice I hadn't considered, is that adulting element of it makes a lot of sense. So let me get back to the my original question, I think, was, if you applied to more than one program, how did you navigate acceptance and rejection through that process? Now, I don't know. Did you apply to more to one place?
No, I just applied to Georgetown. Yeah.
And you got in. So,
Yeah.
all right, that's lucky for you. You're the exception to the
Right.
typical scenario. We'll
And
get back to you and
yeah.
find out how you did that in a minute. Mikayla, how about yourself?
So for my master's degree, I was very methodical. I had like a whole sticky note behind me of like schools I'm applying to, applications sent, money sent, decision. Like I had it very organized. I had a whole spreadsheet of schools. Since I was looking abroad, it was really important to look at like the financials. And since I was working and saving up money for grad school, and that's when I realized, well, schools abroad are much cheaper and sometimes are higher ranked than schools in the US, and they're shorter. So you end up saving a lot of money doing master's programs overseas. And I applied to, I guess, 5 schools. I got into all 5, and I went with University of Amsterdam just because it seemed to match my research interests the best. And same thing for the PhD. I had like my list of schools I wanted to apply for, fees, application fee, deadlines, had everything organized. And I applied to about 5 or 6 schools. And Temple was my top choice alongside Georgia Tech. And I got into both. And then I also got into NC State, but the funding package was really low and I didn't want to go to North Carolina anyways. But the schools I got rejected from, you know, they were schools that I wasn't as interested in based off location. I was waitlisted at Northwestern, which I was hoping I would get in, and they sent me like a bunch of gifts. So I was like, really? You gave me all these gifts and then I get a rejection? And they were like, you know, reaching out to me. Same thing with Cornell. They approached me and I was like, oh, I'm going to get into an Ivy League. And I was like, I didn't get in, but it worked out because the school is important, but it's also like your life and your family. Grad school is long. So moving to Chicago, I got into Syracuse, that would have been a really bad move for me and my fiance, and just having no support system. So the rejections, it always sucks, but sometimes it can be a saving grace from making a decision based solely off of ranking or title and not really looking at it more holistically. With my grad program in Amsterdam, I wish I had done more homework on the university itself because it was not a very accepting place. The professors weren't really interested in teaching and pedagogy. They were more interested in their own research. So it ended up being a really difficult program for us students to navigate. Just kind of being on your own. You have no advising. You're just kind of go to class, do your work, that's it. But the school's ranked well. But that's not really all you need to be considering when looking at a school. So some of the rejections were, again, like a saving grace to just focus on the more holistic, big picture with support and life and work-life balance.
So you didn't look at those rejections as like a personal affront to you or anything, more of a, hey, this means I'm headed in a better direction.
Yeah, and I was like, if they think that I'm not a good fit, then maybe I'm not a good fit. And I sat in on some of the panels with some current students, and a lot of people had really bad things to say about their school at Northwestern. And I was like, well, maybe that's not great. Same thing with Cornell. I heard how difficult the program was. So they try to like really wean students out, how hard the professors are in an unnecessary way. And I said, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking to learn and not be bullied. So it can just be, yeah, you're not a good fit and maybe you aren't, and that school's not a good fit for you. That's how I looked at it.
That's interesting. Tynecia, it dawned on me, I don't think we mentioned to the group that you are also a Temple employee.
I am also a Temple employee. I'm here in the office.
Where do you work? What department are you in?
Yeah, so I'm in the Division of Student Affairs. Specifically, I'm in the Office of Student Activities. And I'm our first Leadership and Service Program Coordinator. So a lot of firsts here on campus. But I run all of our leadership development for our students. So that includes our Inclusive Leadership Conference, as well as any workshops or assessments surrounding our Clifton Strengths Assessment, which we are trying to get out to the larger student body. And I also run our service immersion program here on campus.
Okay. So yeah, you're right. A lot of firsts.
Yes, a lot.
And perhaps too, it affects your answer a little bit to that question about rejections. Did you apply anywhere else?
No, so I did not apply anywhere else. It was kind of simple for me when it came to going from my bachelor's straight into my master's degree. Again, thinking about it was COVID, so all the traveling to other states and touring different universities wasn't something that I was willing to do at the time. And also, like, personally, like, I like being local. I have my business here. I have my job here. Not to say that I'm completely out from moving out of Philadelphia. But again, back to what my core values are when it comes to advocacy, when it comes to education. I have a community that I like to work with and a community that I want to see, come into places of success and kind of like continue on that journey. As opposed to starting over and doing that in some other place. So my resume is all Temple, bachelor's, master's, first full-time job. Everything is all cherry and white right now.
For sure.
But no, I didn't apply anywhere else. So no rejection stories, unfortunately.
Hey, sometimes that's okay though, right? But it does illustrate there is a real kind of variety to how that can happen. For some, it's going to be you hit the home run, you swing once and you hit the home run, and others, it makes a lot of sense maybe to stay in a particular place because that's what you like. Which it does lead into a question I was thinking about was the relocation element. So I know for you, that's not such a situation, but I know you, Mikayla, that is something. You've relocated quite a bit. And I think you have some relocation in your future as well. How does that impact that process of going to grad school? Either of you can attack that one.
I think I can go. So, as I mentioned before, I'm an international student, so I'm quite a long way from home, and getting from home to Philly specifically takes a really long time, around 15 hours of just straight up flying, and then 2 hours of actually maybe even 3 hours just waiting for the bus, and then 2 hours of riding on the bus to get to Philly. So it's a really long time. So I knew that if I wanted to go to grad school, 100% I wanted to be on the East Coast, specifically DC. So, in just to save myself my sanity in the future. Um, yeah, so location wise, I feel like knowing having a general idea of which state you want to study in and what it offers is also like it should be one of the choice characteristics of what kind of grad school you want to go into. I know that DC has a lot of working opportunities, a lot of government offices. So yeah, that's why I chose DC specifically.
Mhm. Cool.
Yeah. I guess for me, yeah, I moved a lot. I mean, I'm from Virginia, then I moved to New York, then Amsterdam, then DC, now Philly. So I've moved a lot, and I also didn't want to move again. Part of why I ended up choosing Philly, it's still reasonably close to family and friends. And I figured it was a city that I could stay put in for a little bit. Moving can be exhausting. Like again, moving to Syracuse would have been very temporary because it's too cold, it's too far. So finding a city that meets your lifestyle, and like Aya was discussing, whatever you want to do after grad school, type of industry you want to go in, type of jobs you want, that's important. Cost of living is also important. You know, if you're going to school in California, factor in those costs. You're going to need a car. All those other things that you might not really consider until you're out there is something to definitely weigh when you're applying and deciding. You know, if you're applying to schools in a state that you would never move to, maybe don't even bother paying the application fee.
Makes sense. And since you mentioned it, and I heard the word a couple of times now, application, I wanted to drill into the application materials. I think this is an obstacle for many folks as they are working through that thought process of, okay, what's motivating me to go? Where do I want to go? Does it involve moving, not moving? Where would I move to? What happens after? But then you really have to get down to it and start filling out things, right? Fill forms, essays, tests, and things like that. How long did it take, if you can reflect on, to put together the application materials, recognizing every school's got their own little subtle variations, right? But when did you start? All right, once you've crossed the Rubicon of, okay, I'm going, I know where, when did you start applying? And what was the hardest element of that package that you confronted? And I know all of you have, even if you stayed at Temple and you're bleeding cherry and white, they probably still made you apply, right? Filling out something. So yeah, I'm curious, like, what were the big obstacles? When did you start?
Yeah, I could start. I also wanted to like really quickly, even though I haven't gone through like any relocation processes, I do have a lot of friends who went to school in different places. And the one thing that I would say, like for advice, be intentional about finding your community in the places that you are going to school in. Because you can there's a whole city around where your school is. So be intentional, find places that are like people like to go in the city, and make that your home for the time that you're there. In regard to application, yes, I had to apply to Temple for each of the programs that I want to be a part of. Even now, I am going back to get my certificate in public relations. So I'm inclined now to Mikayla. And I had to apply for that too. So I think personally, I didn't face any adversity when it came to filling out applications. Going along the lines of advice to give, the first thing, definitely when it comes to recommendation letters, I would always say utilize your network, right? And if you're not doing that now, make sure that you're leaning into whoever your favorite professors are, maybe just some older people who are in your life, professional staff. higher education administrators. So that's anyone who's like outside of the classroom. Make sure that you're keeping up with them, whether you're inside of their class or not, because that'll make it so much easier when it comes to getting recommendations. So anything that I need a recommendation for, I have 3 people off the top of my head that I know I can ask, and they'll get it to me that same week because they know who I am. They know what my ability is. They've seen what I've been able to do. And so I know that they'll be able to get it to me fairly easy, especially if I send them my resume, and then my the letter that, and you know what, the it's blanking me, their statement of goals. So usually when you send those to whoever your recommender is, especially if it's someone who knows you, they can get it to you fairly quickly. And then when it comes to application fees, another piece of advice that I will give, message whoever the recruiter is or the person who is in charge of applications and ask them for a fee waiver, because usually they will give fee waivers if you ask, because people are not asking for them. They typically just, okay, I'll submit my application, I'll pay for it. But they typically have funds to give people who are, especially those who are facing financial hardships. I always ask like, hey, is there a way that I can get a fee waiver? So I've gotten a fee waiver every time I've applied for a program here on Temple's campus. And I'm sure that's similar for other universities. So make sure that whoever you got an email from, whether it was sending you the application instructions, or if you got an email from someone else, like Mikayla had mentioned, she had gotten emails and different things in the mail from other schools, reach out to those people. The contact information is there and ask them for a fee waiver. So those are my 2 advice: ask for a fee waiver, and then also make sure that you're keeping up with your network to make it a lot easier to get your recommendation letters.
Yeah, and I'll just add, start early, know your deadlines, know what's required. Some schools want a personal statement and a statement of interest. Some want 2 recommendation letters, some want 4. Just make sure you know what the schools are requiring and start working on your application materials as soon as possible, so you're not rushing and, contacting people last minute for recommendation letters and they can't turn it around in 2 weeks' time. Just give everyone ample notice, including yourself.
I know this is fresh on your mind, having recently gone through it over the summer, right? So what do you think about that? When did you start, and what did you find was the hardest part of applying in the application package?
Right. So my plan for getting into Georgetown started in January, but I procrastinated until June or July. So they asked for a personal essay, and one of the topics was they had 3 topics. You had to choose one, and one of them was compare yourself to a fictional character. And me being a person that doesn't really like writing, especially about myself, I had a full-on existential crisis. Like, who am I? I didn't know who I was at that time. So I would say give yourself enough time to think about, like, if they start asking questions that are more on the holistic side, give yourself some time to think about it. You don't want to rush things through. Another thing, I had to write a scholarship essay where they asked you what kind of like, if they admitted you, what kind of advantage would you give how would you, I'm forgetting the word right now. How would you help out the whole cohort of your cohort in the community? That was really hard too, because I really had to sit down and think about it. I also talked a lot to Bob regarding that process. I also said multiple times, if only I had to take one test and they would let me in, that'll be great. But that wasn't the case. So yeah, give yourself a lot of time just to think it through.
I want to jump back in really quickly just to go a little bit more into that statement of goals, or the personal statement that I mentioned. One thing that they're going to ask, right, when it comes to that statement of goals, what are you going to do with this degree if you're accepted into the program? How do you see this degree helping you inside of your future career goals, things of that nature? One thing that I was able to do, and I'm bringing up a lot about my core values and my personal values, the things that I hold very close to me, because that's also what they want to see, right? Because if you're doing things that align with your values, it shows that, one, you're going to put your all into it. And it also shows that you will more than likely be consistent with the degree that you're going to get, because it aligns with who you are and the goals that you have for yourself. So I would definitely say, when it comes to that that personal statement or your statement of goals, align your goals with who you are, right? Because they should be aligned with the person that you want to be in the future. And people who are your recruiters and application reviewers, that's definitely something that they want to see.
I want to kind of add a sub question to this application obstacle thing. And I'm glad to hear a consistent sort of theme amongst all of you, which is what we tend to encounter as well when we're meeting with students one-on-one and finding out, like, what do you think the hardest parts are? And it really boiled down to these two things: the recommendations, who do I ask? When do I ask? Really laying that groundwork early. And so you don't, the week before the deadline, you're not looking around for some people to do this, right? So it was refreshing to hear that continues to be a top of mind theme. And then that personal statement, essays, however they frame it at the various institutions is the other large obstacle. I think less so now is entrance exams, right? The GREs typically we're finding are going away. IIC shaking her head, not required. Did you use any resources to help you, say, with reaching out to people, with writing those essays or statements, or any other elements of your particular applications that you went through? And if so, what were they?
Yeah, I had some of my other friends who had applied and gotten in and gone through grad school look over my essays because they had a bit of an insight into what universities are actually looking for. And they gave me really good feedback. And just to touch on the recommendation letters, some schools do want them to be from professors or teachers. Some will take work ones. Usually they're never personal recommendation letters. So it just kind of speaks to the importance of doing the best that you can in your classes, even if it's not academically with your grades, but talking with your professors, making relationships, continuing to talk with them and keep in contact with them, because they're going to be the people that you're going to say, hey, maybe I got a C in your class, but maybe you can still write me a letter that speaks to how passionate I am, or all these other different things. So make sure you're staying in contact with your professors, like from an early part in your academic journey, because you're going to want them to write your letters. Yeah.
Something that I like to do, and I know not everyone does this, and it's going to be like, what, you do that? Like once or twice a year, I actually like to send out an email, a life update of what I'm doing, what's going on, to professors that I had a particular connection with, to past supervisors, past coworkers, just so they keep up to date with what's going on in my life. So again, when it comes back around for times for recommendations, they already know what they're going to write, right? So you do want to give the people who are writing your recommendation time, but sometimes we procrastinate. Sometimes it comes down to the deadline and we're like, hey, this is the last thing I need. I just need this recommendation letter. Please tell them how great I am. And you have those people in your back pocket. You have those people in your network that can produce that letter for you. Again, going back to the statement of goals, and I'm drawing on the question of how will this degree help you in your future or your career goals, just because that's something that I had to answer. Something that I did, I started looking up the jobs that I wanted, whether that was a job that I was going to have next year or the job that I'm going to have in 5 years, because I really wanted to show them how important the degree was to me. And how I am going to be able to use it in the future and how dedicated I will be to the program. Because on top of just being a student inside of the schools and universities also want to produce great alumni. So again, that goes back into being passionate about your programs, being able to come back and speak to how great the programs are. They want to know that you're dedicated to those schools. So again, utilizing your network, making sure you're keeping up with people, even though you don't see them as often as you used to. Start taking some time and looking at different jobs. What's the salary that you're going to make? What are the skills that you need? Will the degree that you're applying for align to the qualities that the job is looking for? And just keep it in mind that you will be an alumni of the university.
Yeah, and lastly, what I want to add, I want to give a huge shout out to the Career Center. It really helped me during my whole process. Bob is usually the coach that has the most knowledge on grad school applications. So I highly recommend reaching out. he really helped me during my essay portion, is that the thing is, when you're writing about yourself, you don't really think about yourself day to day. Like, oh yeah, I'm so great. I did this. I'm an amazing person. So you just kind of, even when you're writing, you kind of put yourself down a bit. But like meeting with a coach, they ask you questions which and frame your sentences in a way that makes you think, oh wait, I actually did this, I did that, I come from this type of background, I have these skills, and like opening yourself up more is really useful.
Yeah, and lean on those career centers. And if you're not currently in school or if you've graduated, see what's at the free library. The public libraries are a great resource if you need writing help, if you need someone to look over essays. So even if you can't get access to a career center in a university or at your job, look at the libraries. They are great resources for help, for editing, and just general guidance and advice.
That's a good tip. To build on Aya, and I didn't ask her to single me out, thank you, Aya, but to let the audience know, there are a number of resources available at Temple for folks going through that, grad school application process. Absolutely, the Career Center is one. One of the components often is a resume or a CV. So you may need some help with that. We have a whole staff of career coaches that can help with creating that, massaging what you have into something different. Also with the personal statements, really any of those kind of written components. This also applies for alumni. We will work with alumni in varying degrees up to 5 years out. So if you in the audience are an alum, you have access to the University Career Center for coaching, that second set of eyes on all those documents. If you're a current student, of course, you have that same access. And the University Writing Center is another great resource on campus for second sets of trained eyes. And I want to kind of add that caveat of trained eyes on some of that writing. It's difficult to ask, say, the roommate or family members, hey, what do you think of this piece of writing that I just made? Mostly they'll say, oh, I love it. It's the best thing you've ever written, right? Because you have to spend Thanksgiving dinner with them, and they don't want any uncomfortable situations. So having some trained second set of eyes, definitely worthwhile. And so I'm glad that you all mentioned some type of resource. I guess ultimately that's the point I wanted to drive, is access those resources. They're available, find them. If you need help finding them, we can do that, but take advantage and use them. Now we've gotten through the application process. We've been admitted somewhere, or we're in it right now, or we just finished. And I'm curious, and I think this is top of mind for many folks. All right, for especially you, Tynecia, I am not sure you want to listen to this. What is it like now in it? It's the day-to-day, day one, semester one, through the next year or two, whatever it took for you or is taking for you. What is that like? What goes on? How does it feel? What are some of the, oh my gosh, this is really great, or oh, I wasn't expecting that kind of moments? I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Mikayla,
I guess it would make sense if I tee up and then name somebody. Why don't you do that? Sorry, I'm not a good TV host. Tynecia, why don't you kick us off with that?
So the day-to-day of grad school, fortunately, so I did not have to do grad school while I was working full-time, and I want to say shout out to the people who did do that, because I can only imagine how much work that is. But I was working part-time while I was getting my master's degree. So I think first I'll speak to the first part that when I was in secondary education, and then when I switched over into advocacy. So again, it was COVID. We were on Zoom when it came to our classes, which were typically anywhere from 5:30 to 8, which are the typical grad school hours when it comes to classes, especially those that meet like outside of asynchronous courses. And then in the second portion of my secondary education degree, I was teaching full-time with the school district. And the particular program that I was with at Temple was the Temple Teacher Residency Program. So if anyone here is interested in education, definitely look into that. I think the biggest thing was managing my time, right? Especially when I did start teaching and I also had classes, we had readings, we have assignments, we had our finals, we had projects, all those things. So definitely leaning into time management, what needs your priority and how much time it takes for you to do certain things. And that's going to be different for everyone. Once I changed my degree into advocacy, which was from 2021 to 2022, we were back in person by that time. So again, my time changed, right? And I had to factor in driving to campus. I had to factor in, okay, if I'm going to work, I'm going to school, I have to get home, I have to take time to eat, I have to take time to do my homework and read and study and do all those things. So yes, leaning into what time management looks like for me and how much time I needed to complete certain things. I think talking about the moments of grad school and the biggest difference between being an undergrad and being in grad school, right? So for me, I was a very involved undergraduate student. I was in every club that you could think of, always on campus, and I was a commuter. So I was definitely very intentional about, again, finding my community on campus. But for grad school, I was a lot more focused on what my studies were, especially because there's opportunities to be involved in different extracurriculars at the grad school level, but obviously not as much as undergrad. But again, going back to what those moments were, it was a lot of the conversations that we were having in the grad school classrooms, right? A lot of those conversations we can apply to what we were doing that day. We were applying to the things that, whether it was our full-time or our part-time work, and just having these conversations with people that are very like-minded, right? Because especially when we're in a grad school program at the master's level or even in your PhD, people are being very intentional about what they're choosing. So they're passionate about these topics, they're educated about these topics, and they're seeking more education. So you're getting real life examples when it comes to the things that you're learning about. And you're having these very intellectual, high-level conversations that you can connect with other people who are passionate about the thing that you're passionate about.
Yeah, time management for sure. A lot of the grad classes, as was just mentioned, they're in the evening. So you have to make sure that you're planning your day accordingly. You're bringing snacks, lunch, whatever it is that you need. In Klein, our courses were usually from 5 to, I guess, Bob, like 7:30, roughly, sometimes 5:30 to 8. You might have a class or two that's during the day or in the afternoon, but generally your courses are going to be in the evenings, and you're either going to be on fellowship or you're going to be TAing or RAing. So that's a teaching assistant or a research assistant. So usually during the day you're working, whether it's your fellowship work or you're TAing and RAing, and then after that you'll have classes in the evening. So your days can be really long. So it's important to rest. Maybe you can't go out as much. Maybe on the weekends, you're in the house, relaxing and doing work, reading, watching TV, as opposed to maybe an undergrad, you were going out a bit more social, because the schedule is so rigorous, the work is so rigorous. You're in class for 3 hours, going through really, really dense theory. You're having lengthy discussions with your professors, your classmates. So rest is the most important thing, I would say, with grad school. And day to day, the days are long. That's not to deter anyone. That's just so you know that they're long days, and you might have to come home from class and then do a little bit of work or something like that. So it's like very important to rest and find balance, whatever that means for you, and to get comfortable with your schedule. I will also say it's important to find like your community of people, whether that's your advisor, a couple classmates, maybe another faculty member that you can kind of come to and talk to and, vent and discuss some of your issues with. But yeah, your schedule, finding community, and finding time to rest, because day to day, the days can be long and it's a lot of information you're taking in. It's lots of theory. You're learning methods, quantitative methods, qualitative methods. You're doing lots of writing, lots of research, lots of reading. So you got to find your balance, because the days, you get a lot in your days.
Yeah. I think just adding on to what Mikayla said, again, not to deter anyone, right? So definitely leaning into being intentional about your time. If you know, like, hey, I'm a social person and I need to see my friends at some point in time during the week, then you know, okay, maybe I need to wake up an hour earlier in the day so I can do some homework early in the morning. Maybe I need to stay up an hour later so I can have some time on the weekends, whatever that looks like. And then another thing, again, with finding community, you are going to be spending a lot of time with the people inside of your grad school classes, especially if you're in a program where you're doing some type of work or research during the day and you have classes during the night. Make friends with the people you're in class with. The people who I took my master's class with, I can literally like call them right now and be like, hey, what are you doing? Let's go out and do something, right? Like I was super intentional about finding friends. And I'm also very big on creating a network, right? These are people who are going to be in the spaces that you also want to be in, hopefully, because you're getting the same degree, right? So definitely network with those people, not just for the professional advancement, but also for the personal, right? These are people who you're in classes with. You can have come in maybe 30 minutes earlier, grab a snack, grab a coffee, whatever it is, prepare for class, talk about the readings, make it fun, right? Make it a part of your life because it is going to be a big part of your life during the time that you are in grad school.
Yeah, and just to add on about schedule, your schedule is going to change semester to semester and year to year. For the PhD programs, you're going to be in school 4 or 5 years. So kind of find a schedule that works for you. So this year I'm a fellow in the Scholar Studio in the library, and I knew that's what I wanted to do because I knew I would be prepping for comps and doing my dissertation proposal. So I kind of planned ahead, okay, apply to the Scholar Studio fellowship, hopefully get it. I did get it. And then I have a better schedule that works for me, right? Because when you're prepping for comps, it's lots of reading, writing. Your comps take about anywhere from a day to 3 days for each exam. So for me, I come into the Scholar Studio just like a normal job, 9 to 5, I'm here. I'm working on my research, I'm prepping for comps, I'm reading, I'm writing, and I'm doing that every day until it's time for my exam. So I had to adjust my schedule to fit my goals, and I wanted to take comps now. So you got to kind of get to know yourself and know how you work. If you're a night owl, a day owl, do you like structure, or do you kind of just work as it ebbs and flows? So yeah, being mindful of your own workflow and your needs is really, really important day to day.
Great. This was all really great advice. I had a couple other questions, but I don't want to go over time. And I want folks in the audience to have an opportunity to ask any of you or all of you any of their questions. So I'm going to open the floor. Feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat. I mean, it's a small enough group we can do either of those. If there's something particularly burning for you that you want to know about or have our folks talk about further, don't be shy. You've learned everything.
Mm-hmm.
I did have a question.
Do it.
I am applying to a school that's asking about a writing sample versus a statement of purpose. And like they didn't really give like any context for that. So do you think could I use a statement of purpose, or do you think they want something I've like previously done, or
Yeah. So if they're asking for both, the first thing I will say is whatever contact information you have, I would send an email and ask for clarification.
Yes.
That's the
Okay.
first thing that I would do, because I would hate for you to submit something and they're like, oh, you're not going to get in because you didn't follow directions. And you're like, y'all
Mhm.
give me directions. Because we have to
True.
remember, for these application processes, there's a lot of people involved. And to be completely honest, sometimes they don't talk to each other as much as they should and communicate very clearly. So whatever email you have, and you can Google whatever who the recruiters are, or the office of whatever college that you're applying to specifically for that program. And I would ask them for clarification first. That's the biggest step that I would say take. But again, if they're asking for either a writing sample or a statement of goals, and there's no prompt with that statement of goals, typically they're asking, what will you do with this degree? So what is your goals what is that going to look like if you are accepted into the program? And then for the writing sample, that's something that you've done inside of your classes already. So whether that's a research paper, typically something that's a little more, what's the word? Not heavy is not the word, but something that you probably took a little bit more time on. So a final essay or something along those lines. But I would definitely say reach out and ask for clarification on what they're asking for.
Yeah,
Okay.
and think about what the program that you're applying to is as well, Julia. So if you're applying for maybe a creative writing or a literature program, maybe you want to use one of your creative writing examples as opposed to a research paper. But if it is a very like research oriented, very academic program, then you're going to want to use probably a class paper, a final paper, a research paper that you did. But whatever you feel is like the best example of your research. And definitely something that's formal, well cited, and really shows off your skills and hopefully fits in with the program. So if you're applying to a media program, maybe the research, the essay that you use is about media or something like that. So try to find something that fits with what you're applying for. And again, don't be afraid to ask questions. That's what the program directors and stuff like that are for. They are ready to answer future applicants' questions. So send them your questions, ask them, hey, I need clarity. Can you clarify this? And they will be more than happy to.
Okay. Yeah. That helps a lot.
Great. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Fire.
I've kind of been looking at like certain what do you call it? Like certain like doing research basically on like what type of schools I want to go to and like if it's going to be in the city or if it's going to be out of state and all of that. But I came across a certain university that I'm like looking to like put my application in to, and I've also like seen like the faculty of like the certain degree program and like the, you know, I didn't know they kind of list like I guess like where they went to school, but like I've seen basically that they have like Temple alumni there. And I was like kind of shocked, but like in such a good way, because I was like, oh, this feels so nice to know that like, you know, like there's like alums from like Temple that like, you know, teach there and stuff and that are part of the faculty actually. But my question more so is like, how do you like kind of, I don't know, like I feel like I kind of struggle with like understanding like what route do I take in like connecting with them? Like, is there like a certain like, you know, like rule I should be following? Is it like, should I just reach out or should I just like, I don't know. Like, I feel like that kind of gives me a little anxiety because I feel like I don't know how to approach them, even though it's like, hey, like, you know, like I'm a Temple, well, senior now, I'm about to graduate and I would like to connect and know more about the program and like, you know, kind of pick your brain in that way. But yeah.
Yeah, do exactly that. Send them an email and say, hey, I'm a Temple senior. Here's what my major is, whatever. And just say, I'm thinking about applying to your grad program. I would love to talk to see, you know, how the school is, how you're liking it, what the school can offer. Doesn't have to be super formal or long, but yeah, just introduce yourself. Say, I'm Temple made too, and I just want to talk with you. And people, 90% of the time, people are going to be very happy to get an email from a prospective student and to talk. People love that. So, you know, it can be a bit daunting, but just go ahead and send that email and just say hi.
Yeah, definitely you want to start making that genuine connection, but I would also say have some specific acts or some specific questions that you definitely want to talk about. If they're a faculty member of that particular school, of course, if they're a Temple alum, they'd be more than willing to connect with you. But you also have to remember that whatever classes they're teaching, whatever other responsibilities they have, they do have to also cater to that. And the time that they give you will be additional time outside of what they're doing. So you definitely want to be mindful of not just their time, but also your time, right? So have those specific things that you want to talk about inside the meeting, things that you definitely want to tackle, things that you need to know. Just to be, again, I'm all about intentionality. If I had someone reach out to me, I'm like, okay, I would love to connect with you, but what do you want to know? On top of that, I also like, again, like I just said, not wasting anyone's time. I want to make sure that I'm the right person that you need to connect with. If you want to talk about admissions, like, okay, maybe I'm not the person that you want to talk to. If you just want to connect overall, like, oh, it's a Temple alum, I want to know who's there. I want to start building connections inside of that space, then that's absolutely fine, right? But you want to make sure you're connecting with the right people, and utilizing your time in the most effective way.
Yeah, and also just a small piece of advice. If you, one of my professors used to say, if you feel awkward connecting to professionals, just say, yeah, I have this assignment to do, so it'll be really interesting to connect with you. Always help me out because I could just blame my professor on that.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I would add on to that, not only is it a great idea to connect with faculty if you see that alumni kind of relationship, but also separate from that, because you're not going to find, despite the fact Temple Owls are everywhere, right? You're not necessarily going to find that, but you might be able to find current students in the program. And I think those are folks very much worthwhile reaching out to as well. And in most instances, I think you'll find that to be a receptive audience to questions that you might have about, inside the program specifically. I wanted to, Sethrin typed a question in the chat that I'm going to tackle a little bit and then see if any of you want to add on regarding TA and RA work, teaching assistants or research assistant work as part of the schedule to think about when going to grad school. And is it a requirement? So the answer to that is it's not satisfying. It depends. So first and foremost, it depends on the programs as to whether or not it's offered. So I'll tell you, for example, most master's degree programs do not have a teaching assistant, RA assistant component to it, whereas that's more common in PhD level programs. But even within them, it's not guaranteed or certain. Some are where I'll use as an example I'm familiar with. If you enrolled at were accepted into the PhD program at University of Pennsylvania and their communications program, all of those students are fully funded. Whereas other schools, maybe a few are. And when I say fully funded, meaning now you are going to be a TA or an RA, right? Whereas others, they may be able to offer that to a handful of students, but not all of them. So that's kind of it depends. It depends a lot on the degree type you're pursuing and then the institution that you're going to do that within. So that is something to really drill down into, and it can be part of your decision-making process if confronted with multiple choices. You may want to consider the ones that you are going to do that. In terms of part-time programs, I would be surprised to see that as an element. I think there it's more about you are paying for the credits as you're going, because these will depend a lot on your schedule, right? You may be teaching during the day and taking classes at night, so it would be hard to do that in a part-time way. But I encourage anyone else to offer their thoughts there.
Yeah, and that's also a good question, Sethrin. And I think it was Asiata. Did I say your name right?
Isata.
Isata. Sorry, I apologize. That's a good question to ask, is about funding and how it works, because it does really vary. Some programs, most programs don't offer funding over the summer, might be an additional fellowship. So you want to ask those questions so you know like your financial status and your funding status. But yeah, it really does depend, Sethrin. And if you're definitely know you want to go into higher ed and teach, so you might want to find a program that does require you to TA, because that might be really important for you after you graduate. And usually part-time is only for people who work at the university. Like usually for PhD programs, there's not a part-time option. It's either full-time or that's it. Unless you're a full-time employee, then they might allow you to just take a couple classes here or there. But these are all great questions to ask that program directly, and they will be more than happy to answer it in detail and be transparent.
Cool. Any other questions before we close up for the day? I'll see if anyone wants to squeeze one in.
Um,
Go ahead.
what would you say? What would you guys say is a good way to make your application stand out?
Hmm.
Kind of worry about that, like especially since we were talking about the writing sample. I feel like I'm a good writer, but I don't know, sometimes like I feel like in the past I don't know. So what would you guys say is a good way to like kind of stand out amongst other applications?
Let me jump in right away and I'll let you go. One thing you should definitely do is check out Thursday's program of grad school week. See, I'm getting better at this hosting thing. Because there I've pulled together two folks. One is a current admissions dean at Georgia State, and the other used to be a dean of admissions. So these are some of the folks that are behind the curtain, and they're now going to be able to tell you, and that's what their program is designed to deliver on Thursday, how to make the strongest looking application package. I don't know what their answers are. We're going to find that out on Thursday, 2:00 on Zoom. You can register on Handshake. And if you can't make it, still register because we'll record it and we'll let you know, through there that it's available. But by all means, any of you have any thoughts, please jump in. For Julia.
I would definitely say reaching out, right? So we have things like LinkedIn. Again, you can Google different email addresses to see who the people who are in charge of admissions, or even if it's a coordinator who kind of like also reviews it, but is not at that final decision. I think any way that you can get your name, like people will see your application, right? They see their application, they see your name, but they're also seeing hundreds of different applications. So I think, again, the best way to stand out is reaching out. Hi, I just submitted my application. I'm excited about this program and the possibility to be a part of this school. Please let me know if you have any questions about my application after you've reviewed it. Maybe they may see it and maybe they won't, but at least you put yourself out there to show that you took a little bit of that extra time to find who the people are in charge of admissions.
Okay, thank you.
And then definitely use your resources. As I mentioned earlier, you have access to Career Center coaches to put second eyes on any of your writing. The Student Success Center, that writing center there. Even faculty members, if you feel comfortable with, hey, would you mind looking at my statement because it's related to a field that they perhaps are, well known in or know something about, or know about the programs, the institutions, folks that speak the language, I guess, is what I'm thinking about. Lean into those resources in addition to the networking. That does make a lot of sense. All right. Well, I want to conclude for today and thank all of our panelists for joining us and imparting your wisdom to the group, and thank all of you for coming and for your questions. Feel free again to reach out if you have anything afterwards that you think of, and we can take it from there. But thank you, everyone.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Good luck if you are entering the process right now.
Yeah. Good luck, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
Good luck, everyone.